Here I'm going to push down on it a little bit just beyond the choke area. The choke opens back up, but this still has full throttle. That all seems to be working. I thought I saw that choke stick when I first opened it. You see what I'm saying? Right now it's stuck. So there's a problem here. This may be the whole problem, or a big problem. Something's making this stick. For some reason it's not pulling itself back every time. Remember the spark plug looked like it'd been running rich for a long time? If that's sticking closed, it'll be running with a choke on all the time. Well, once I get the carburetor apart, I'll see what it's like. See if I can figure out why that's hanging up a little bit. There may just be a lot of dirt. There is an awful lot of dirt on it, as you can see. When we get done, it should be cleaner. So I'm going to stop again and get that carburetor off so we can take a good look at it. Okay. I'm taking this cover off here. This is actually not a cover. It's just part of the air delivery system. Those has got an O-ring on it. That sits right on those studs. I'm going to put this, once I start the carburetor, I always put everything in a container, because there's lots going to be little tiny pieces here and there. Now as you can see, that this is actually a stud that goes all the way through here. See how it goes through here and hooks onto the intake manifold. Right here, there's plastic. Everything's plastic nowadays, so be careful. It breaks very easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take loose this stud, and then I'm going to pull the carburetor, gently pull it off. Let me get as wide angle as I can get here. Pull it off, and then I'll turn this carburetor sideways and get these linkages loose. Another thing, make sure when you get this linkage you don't lose this little spring. There's a little spring here. Normally there's a spring, and what that's, it's called an anti-hunt spring. You can't see it, but it's very long, but it's very fine. See the fine line? There's the coil's back under there, and it's a little tiny hole here that it hooks into. And what that does, it tries to keep any slop out of this linkage. It holds the linkage tight so that it doesn't sit there and go hunting, so it doesn't keep revving up and down. So that's what I'm going to do now. Well, I've pre-loosened these studs. I'm going to take one of them out for you so you can see what it looks like. Now the carburetor, see, is wanting to fall. Here's the stud. It looks like a nut on there, but it's just part of the stud. Pushes up against the carburetor. Now we're going to take off the other one, and I'm not going to be able to show this because I can't hold the camera and do it at once. I'll try to do it with one hand. See the stud right there. So now we got to get this off of there. As you can see, if I turn it upside down like this, I just might get it loose. Okay, so that just came off on this end. This is one end of the linkage. Now this other one I'm going to have to turn the carburetor another way, like upside down. Can you see that? Now, if I keep turning it, well, I'm going to have to put the camera down, but anyway, you get the idea maybe. I'm just going to unhook the linkage. I'm not bending the linkage, I'm just trying to unhook it from the hole. Well, there's the things I took off. Here's the carburetor. That's the air delivery tube. So now we're going to look this over. I've got some newspapers out here. And I'm going to take this float out of here. You can see that it's got pivots on a little pin. Sometimes the pins just fall out, so be careful. I'm going to push this one out and then I'll turn the camera back on. Okay, so I started the pin to come out, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it out in front of the camera. Put it in the container so I don't lose it. Now I'm going to lift this off of here very gently. This is the float. Now I'm going to shake it, make sure it's not sinking. If it had a hole in it, it would be full of gasoline. No noise, so I'm going to say it's good. Now, as you can see, here's the needle. This is the thing that actually seals the gas. Keeps it from running on into the engine and doing what it just did. I'll put this under a magnifying glass and take a look and see if it's got a groove in it. We'll turn on some more light here. And that's where the valve goes in and seats. It's an awful lot like the back of your toilet. It's just a float, and when the gas comes up, it's supposed to turn it off. You know how sometimes your toilet will work for years and then all of a sudden it starts running all the time? Same idea. Only this is gasoline instead of water. You can see dirt falling off of it right now. On some of the older carburetors that don't have much plastic in them, I'll put these in acid and clean them all out. But on this one, it's got so much plastic that I'd probably ruin it. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a can of carburetor cleaner. I'm going to use this gum out carb and choke cleaner and spray all the holes, check out and make sure that they're all clean. And just pretty much inspect it. I want to clean it real good, so I want to see why this choke is hanging up a little bit. I'll get back to you. Alright, I've taken it apart, cleaned it. As you can see, it looks a little better than it did. I sprayed it off. When you're spraying this, be sure to wear goggles or something, because that stuff is so nasty. It might make you blind, I don't know. Anyway, it goes up and down. I'm just looking at it, sighting over it. It seems to be pretty level. That's what you want. You want it to be level when it's closed. As you see, I got the carburetor upside down. Normally it's hanging like this. Let me hold it with one hand. Okay. And then when the gas comes up, it closes just like in a bathroom. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow in where the gas, let's just say I'm going to use compressed air and make not very high PSI into this. Then I'm going to turn the carburetor upside down and see if it'll turn off the air. And it does. If I turn it upside down, you can get no air through it. So if it'll hold air, it should hold gas. Also took a small wire, went through every hole in it, every orifice. You can see some orifices there. Okay, now I'm starting to reassemble the carburetor. And I want to put this float bowl over the top of that float. But remember, I don't know if you remember back, but the solenoid that actually holds the bowl in there, I want to test that before I put it in there and make sure it does go open and close. So hang on a minute, I'm going to hook it up and then I'll show you. Alright, I got it plugged in now. I'm going to reach up and turn the key on. I'm not going to try to start it, I'm just going to turn the key to the on run position. And you see it go. It should be open it up and let the carburetor deliver gas to the engine. Remember, that's just to keep it from backfiring. So when it's coasting down, it's not putting gas in there on top of a hot piston and valves. It will not stop gas from going to the float. So I'm pretty sure the problem is the float. And it was so full of dirt. I think it was just dirt. So now we're going to go ahead and reassemble it, put it all back together, and we'll see. I'll have to put new oil in it, of course. Oh, by the way, one thing I didn't mention, when I took this off, there's a seal. That's actually like a, I don't know what you'd call it. It's not really an O-ring, but it's a seal. It stayed in, this one stayed right with the bowl, so I just went ahead and put a little bit of Vaseline on it so that it would slide up over this ridge and make a good seal. Normally the gas should never get up to there. When it gets up to there, we see what happens anyway. Okay, so now I got the carburetor reassembled. Got the solenoid on there, tightened up, and I'm going to do the upside down test one more time before I put it back together to make sure there isn't anything restricting it. Remember back when I said the choke was hanging up? This choke has its own little built-in spring. It's underneath a piece of foam, so I cleaned the foam real well, then I oiled the foam up. This is what a choke looks like. Basically all it's doing is turning off or restricting the air going into the carburetor. So that's making a bigger differential, which then pulls more gas to the engine. When an engine's cold, it doesn't vaporize the gasoline very well. So you have to put in more gasoline for what, and use what little vapors come off of it. But once it starts and the pistons and everything are hot, then you don't need to restrict the air, and you let it open up, and then downstream, I don't know if you can see this, this is the throttle. The throttle restricts the air before the venturi in the carburetor. This is the throttle part of it. So right there you'd be idling, and then when you start giving it more gas, it'll open it back up. Of course, on these engines you have a governor that'll sit there and constantly wiggle and move it, try to keep it at a certain RPM. Okay, the carburetor's mounted back on. I got the linkage on. Linkage, I have my little linkage anti-hunt spring. I don't know if you can see it, but there it is. Let's see if it goes in. I don't think this camera has the capability of doing all that. But anyway, there's a little tiny spring right here. It's almost like a hair. Hooks into that. You can see the hole, but you probably can't see the wire. And on this one, since they chose not to give me a cable to push and open it, so that mechanically all we have is a way to close the choke, which is this lever right here. You can see it pushing, but see, that's my physical pushing that. But if this hangs up, even though you back off on it, the choke is still shut. So the only thing that's opening that choke is the vacuum and this little spring. So you want this to run very, very freely. You don't want to run around with that choke stuck like this. It has holes in it. It'll probably run, but it'll run terrible. It'll just burn gas like crazy, cause all kinds of trouble. So that's about that. I just got to plug in the solenoid and put it all back together. Put new oil in it, and we'll see if it'll run.